The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Friends in Recovery podcast, the podcast that is here to help you, a loved one, or a friend get started down the road to recovery. This is the Friends in Recovery podcast, brought to you by the Genesis House. Genesis House, providing a safe, nurturing environment to heal from addiction since 1992. Please be a friend and share our message with a friend on Podbean, iTunes, iHeartRadio, or YouTube. And now, here are your Friends in Recovery.
Hey, welcome everybody to Friends in Recovery Podcast.com. Nice to be here at Studio 21 Podcast Cafe in the lovely city or town of Salem, New Hampshire, with our producer extraordinaire, Ed Sullivan.
Hey, Ed.
Happy to be here. And I have my good friend Jersey Ed, so we have two Eds, and I was told two Eds are what?
Better than one.
Better than
right.
one? Oh, boy.
But this Ed's a better Ed.
How's it going, Ed?
Good. How are you, Mike?
Good. Nice to see you.
And you are who?
Oh, I am the Podfather.
He is the Podfather.
That's right.
And I'm Ed Chionchio, Jersey Ed, as you like to
Jersey
call
Ed, that's right.
Yeah. So
here we are.
Yep. How you been?
I've been well. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
Yeah, you've been staying busy, enjoying your summer?
Of course. Yep. Just seen you last week. And,
Yep.
we have another good show again
Yeah,
today,
we have a great show today. I was reading the bio of the guest. So you got a little business to take care of there?
I always got business to take care of, Mike.
You
So
do.
we like to thank Genesis House for sponsoring everything. Taylor and everybody down at Genesis House, a wonderful place to get sober and clean at. To get a hold of us, you can go to genesishouse.net. You can call the 800 number. It's 800-737-0933, and it's always scrolling if you're on YouTube, and it's always in the show notes. To get a hold of us here at the podcast, we need guests. We need alumni. We're doing an alumni series now.
We are.
We're collecting a bunch of alumni. So you alumni, we need you to get on the email. Contact us at help@friendsinrecoverypodcast.com or Skylar N. Genesis at genesishouse.net or Melissa H. at genesishouse.net. Send them, if you're a guest speaker, if you're alumni, send them a note and let's get you on this show. Remember, we're also Facebook Live has been going real well.
Unbelievable.
Just the views, and thank you, Facebook people. Thank you very much. You can get us on YouTube and all your favorite podcast catchers, and always make sure to subscribe. That's important.
Got to hit that subscribe button.
And I know, Mike, you like to give your phone number out so you can get those 3 a.m. calls from all those addicts that call you.
That's right. You can reach me, Mike Miles, the Podfather, at 978-746-1717. That's my direct phone number right here.
There you go.
With me all the time. I'm getting a phone call as we speak. 978-746-1717. Who do we got for a guest today?
Well, before we go into that, I want to just say something to Ed, our producer extraordinaire. This camera is unbelievable. I think it makes us look even better than what we are,
which is hard to do.
Which is very hard to do. And he's got some new angles for us and shots and all kinds of crazy stuff. So if you're on, there you go. Hey guys, we got us up a little close there. If you're on YouTube, you can see all that. So make sure you get to YouTube and subscribe. And
it even picks up the plume of smoke we just
It does. We are the only two cigar smoking podcast providers out there, I guess. I don't know anybody else who smokes cigars on a Friends in Recovery show, but
we do.
So we do have a guest today. We have Dr. Duncan McEwen. He's board certified in psychiatry and certified by the American Society of Addiction Medicine. You should read all this,
right.
Mike.
Board certified in psychiatry and certified.
He graduated from Tulane University.
Yes, he did medical school, and he completed a psychiatry residency at UNC. Wow, I didn't see this part. University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He's been working in the field for over 20 years, and he specializes in treating mood disorders, which I look so forward to talking to him about. Attention deficit disorder and substance abuse. He works at Wellness First Psychiatric Associates in Durham, North Carolina. How are you, Doctor?
Welcome, Doc.
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for having me on.
You're welcome. And so you have so much going on. You had to have two of us introduce you. So, Doc, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us where you come from, maybe why you're doing what you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Well, I think the why is kind of an interesting question. I graduated from my residency back in the late '80s, and this brilliant psychiatrist from Raleigh, North Carolina, John Howie, invited me to join his staff at what was called the ATC, which is the Alcohol Treatment Center in Raleigh. And about a half day a week, I was running a little outpatient clinic, treating people mostly with addiction problems. And after about 5 or 6 years doing it, I was really enjoying working with the patients, and I decided to formalize my training. So I just kind of drifted in that direction. I think, to me, what's exciting about working with people with addiction problems is oftentimes it's like an Achilles heel. If you repair that tendon, these people can be off and running and really live fantastic lives.
Absolutely. The one thing that we did discuss before we went on air, you said you're an addictionologist. I think that's pretty fascinating and wonderful. Our doctor, Dr. Jordan down at Genesis House, is an addictionologist also. And I know for our dual diagnosis patients, that's super important because you guys understand the fine line between addiction and the mental health piece and how to make all that work together and put out a good treatment plan so that person with that dual diagnosis can get the same treatment as the everyday kind of drunk.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if you were walking into my office as one of my patients, the first thing I would tell you is I think my job is to help you transition from being addicted to drugs to being addicted to life. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you talk about being addicted to life, you're starting to talk about playing the game of life. And there's a lot of facets to playing the game of life well enough to reap its rewards. So we automatically get into the dual diagnosis stuff and the diagnostic issues. But we're also acting as life coaches. In some way, as psychiatrists, if we're really on our game, we're working as a sports trainer, mm-hmm. where we're dealing with the symptomatic diagnostic issues, but we're also working as a coach, helping motivate people to use their inner strengths to live life well and efficiently.
Exactly. The thing that you said, explain what dual diagnosis is, because we have new people that are out there maybe just watching this and maybe want to get their loved one into treatment. They may not, we know these terms because we've been doing it for 20 plus years. Can you explain what dual diagnosis is and how you can help that situation?
Yeah, one side of the dual is obviously the addiction problem, which may be on the surface. Sometimes it's not. Mm-hmm. And the other side of the dual diagnosis is what you get out of the diagnostic statistical manual. Is it depression? Is it anxiety? Is it ADD, bipolar disorder? These kinds of things that we need to be aware of, because if they're unattended, then people can't really optimize their functioning.
Exactly. So if we don't treat one and just treat the other, we let them go out of treatment, they're going to probably more than likely relapse, unfortunately, if we don't treat them both in sync.
That's quite right. So I'll tell people, in terms of my psychiatric role, I'm like the sports trainer wrapping their ankle to get them out on the playing field of life, and like the coach, or like the therapist, I'm like a coach who's helping them play the game well and learn efficiencies, become more aware of their strengths, and become more aware of their weaknesses. The best athletes in the planet know their strengths, and they enjoy their strengths, but they're also really aware of their weaknesses, and they're always working on them. There's nobody who's so perfect that they don't have weaknesses that they can improve on.
Dr. McEwen, Mike Miles here. I just had a quick question. I've been a clinical social worker and a licensed alcohol drug counselor for almost 20 years, helping a lot of people, mostly young men between the ages of 17 and 35. I find a lot of the psychiatrists in my area, which is in Massachusetts, the workload is just insurmountable. They're always super busy. It's difficult to get somebody in to see a psychiatrist. And the thing I wanted to ask you specifically was, a lot of my clients will go see a psychiatrist. They seem to only get about 10 minutes of a quick assessment, and then they're given medication. I assume probably for a dual diagnosis, ADD, anxiety, social disorders, whatever malady that they might have been diagnosed with or by the doctor, and the medication obviously is to help them. But it sounds to me like you come from a different approach and about being a life coach. I like hearing this. So do you when you do an assessment, is it usually more than a half hour, or is it?
Take us through the process of the assessment, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
that'd be good. Yeah.
The assessment process, it's not time, it's quality. I think just like patients are responsible for kind of drawing red lines in their life and protecting their interests, so are psychiatrists. And I like to set up my practice so my patients are an opportunity where I'm enthusiastic to work with them. If I felt so pressured that my patients were a burden, I'd be doing something else, because if you don't like what you're doing and have a lot of positive energy to do it, it runs flat. But the assessment is actually not all that difficult. It's like, if I go to a golf coach, it doesn't take him long at all to know what my mechanical issues are. That would be the diagnostic side of the equation. And it might take him longer to know what my attitudinal issues are, and they're important too. Let's say, to use a metaphor, and I use a lot of metaphors. I don't know why they seem to work for me, but life is too hard not to use them. Let's say, you're in the batting cage and I'm watching you and you got a lot of talent and your right elbow is too high. And I say to you, drop that elbow. It's going to take a little bit of motor memory and work to make the change, but it's going to help. And the patient, or in this case, the athlete, says, oh, I don't want to drop my elbow. I like my elbow where it is. Then we've got an attitude issue, and then I need to respect the complexity of this person's psychology and figure out what this elbow issue means to the patient.
Okay.
Because if I just try to strong arm them, it doesn't no good. They're not going to change. But if I figure out what the poetry is behind their being in love with their elbow the way it is, then maybe they'll be more receptive to change.
To change it, yeah.
Great analogy. That's super.
That is. So you're slowly changing the addict's ways, which what we us as addicts, as you said at the beginning of the show, we're both in recovery. That's what we had to do. We had to change our ways, and you can't change them real fast, because that's when you go running and saying, "Fuck it, this is not what I signed up for." I don't need somebody breathing down my throat, and we do see that a lot in some treatment centers, some outpatient centers. And even in AA, sometimes as old timers say, "This is how you do it. This is how you do it." End of story. Don't do it any other way. Well, that sometimes doesn't work. So, and I like your approach. It's you probably have a lot of success in what you do, is what I'm guessing.
It sounds to me also that you really have a true desire, and it seems to me also that you definitely getting some great feelings about helping people and seeing success. Unfortunately, from what I see, and again, as a therapist, I have a death pool with files that I have clients that have overdosed, died, committed suicide, and it's very sad. And a lot of these young gentlemen, and women, but mostly gentlemen, they had some promising lives, and it's hard, it's horrific, and the success rate didn't seem to be there at all. I got to be honest, I don't see a lot of success, and just going with that, and maybe you see it differently. Why do you think people might not that have? I'm talking about the opioid epidemic that's going on now. I just don't see a lot of success. What's your opinion on that?
I'm going to quote you here real quick, Doc, and maybe this will tie into your question, Mike. One of your quotes are, "Success is dependent on motivation and preparation." That was one of the things, and I think that ties perfectly into Mike's question.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of the trick is not to give false promises. Like when I talk about getting addicted to life, one of the first things I owe the patient, and I explain it to him, is a definition of what I mean by addicted to life. And, again, I'm a kind of a sports analogy guy. I can't help but be, because life is challenging. Life doesn't give us stuff, but it's plenty open to letting us earn the great rewards from life if we start playing the game well. So I'll tell them a good analogy is, just imagine a competent football player, put him behind in the game, make it January and 4 degrees out. So if I say to that football player, "Are you happy?" he'll say no. If I say to the player, "Are you hurting?" he'll start to get bored with my dumb questions and say, "Of course I am, it's 4 degrees out." But then it gets really interesting. If I ask him, "Do you like football?" he'll pause just a second and say, "I love it." And then even more interesting, I think, if I ask him, does he think he can catch up? He won't arrogantly kind of say, "Oh yeah, no problem." He'll look within like the skill set he sees and say, got a good chance. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a nice metaphor for life. Life is tough, and I think part of helping people with addiction problems is helping them embrace pain and stress as a challenge rather than a defeat, and helping them gain the confidence that they're going to get the assets to be able to start winning this game.
Yep. So we're going to take a quick break here, but I'm just going to throw a little teaser out. Getting Clean is a pleasure-seeking enterprise. We're going to talk about that and more when we come back with Doc McEwen.
Duncan McEwen.
Duncan,
we'll be back.
Doc. All right, Doc.
Genesis House is a premier substance abuse and rehabilitation facility located in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. We have been providing the highest quality of addiction treatment since 1992 and are accredited by the Joint Commission. We offer a range of programs that include detox, residential treatment, dual diagnosis, a Christian track for people who want to incorporate their faith into treatment, a uniform services track, and we work with most major insurance carriers. Genesis House is led by a dedicated team of administrative and clinical professionals, and we stand on our commitment to excellence in recovery services. Contact us today to find out more about our program. Take the first step and call Genesis House at 800-737-0933 or visit us on the web at www.genesishouse.net. That's 800-737-0933 or www.genesishouse.net. Begin your journey to a long and successful recovery with Genesis House.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. FriendsInRecoveryPodcast.com. Podcasting live from Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Jersey Ed and the Podfather. We're here today, and we're having a great conversation with Dr. Duncan McEwan down in North Carolina. And I'll tell you, a lot of good sports down there. And I like your sports analogies, but boy, there's a lot of good sports down in North Carolina. I love the Tar Heels. So I'm reading something here. It says, success is dependent on motivation and preparation.
That's it.
And
that's not my quote. That's a Doc's quote.
That's a great quote. Doc, walk us through there, us feeble-minded gentlemen sitting here.
Well, that quote, I probably put up somewhere on the web a long time ago. It runs a little flat. It's true, but I think the other quote that you cited before we went on the break about getting clean as a pleasure-seeking enterprise gets into a much more interesting area of conversation.
That's what we like.
Is that called dodging the question? Am I sounding like a politician to you guys?
Not yet, but you're good.
So how many years have you been working with people in recovery?
I started out probably in 1988, and I formalized my kind of certification and that sort of stuff in 2004.
So, wow.
Good.
It's and you've been centrally located right there in North Carolina. Is that your home base?
Yep. I've been here a good while, long enough to see Michael Jordan playing when he was an undergraduate.
Wow.
Right. We have a famous columnist and radio talk show host, Howie Carr. He went to UNC, and he talks about Chapel Hill quite a bit on his Boston-based radio show. And he really seems to have... He's probably in his mid-60s now, but he really seems to have always kept those memories. The memories he obtained down in North Carolina have stayed with him over the years, and he always speaks so highly of the area. I've never been there, but it sounds like it's a beautiful place. How hot is it there today, by the way?
How what?
How hot is it? What's the Fahrenheit there today? What's the temperature?
I think it's getting close to 100 with a heat index of around 105, 106,
wow.
something like that.
Wow. Doc, the other thing that you said, lasting recovery is achieved by those who discover life's natural highs. I got a bunch of question marks around that. I know my natural high is running. I'm in recovery 25 years and from alcohol and cocaine. And running is my natural high. Is that what you're talking about? Something that we can help ourselves out in like AA meetings, or like Mike said, working before him and I were talking off camera, working and all that. What's your as a doctor? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, this actually gets into some pretty cool conversation if we pursue it. It gets into the clinical and scientific side of things. I mean, the starting point is the Almighty or whoever designed us put addiction circuits in everybody's brain. Why is that? Well, it's useful for human beings to have addiction circuits, and they're there to get us hooked on cool things in life. And the science is really getting refined. We know that these circuits constitute reward circuits, but they also constitute what we call salience circuits. Salience being a common word meaning something that stands out. Mm-hmm. But salient circuits have a lot to do with survival. If you want an example of that, imagine being out on the porch some afternoon with your dog and a bunny saunters by in the garden. Well, for humans, a bunny doesn't have a whole lot of salience. It's cute, but your dog, his adrenaline kicks in, and before he even thinks about it, he's on top of that rabbit, and then he has a casual meal. So what constitutes getting the natural highs, I think, is finding ways to massage our reward circuits, aligning our salience in a proper way. It's thought by a lot of the people who study addictionology that when you mess around with drugs, it screws up the normal human salience. Normal human salience is for things like creativity, competition, devotion to family and friends. And when people get hooked on the drugs, all of a sudden those priorities drop and the drugs end up being promoted on this pedestal. It was really, if I can talk on for a second, it's up to you guys.
Please do.
I was talking to a marvelous woman. She wasn't a patient. She's been clean for 5 years now. She's got the great job rolling, the social contacts, the family stuff. She's experiencing a lot of reward in life. And I said to her, listen, you don't need to tell me your personal business, but tell me think of something you're going to do in the next 24 hours. It's really fun. She did. And then I said, now picture a bowl full of pills that you used to get in trouble next to that. How do they measure up? And she said, those pills would be pretty tempting. But then within a few seconds, she said, tomorrow I'm having breakfast with my grandmother, and there's no way those pills would compete with that. So I think what she was saying is, it's been 5 years of recovery, and she's starting to notice salience in life. And I can guarantee if I talk to her a couple of years from now, other areas of salience would have cropped up. And as that happens, the drugs fall down in importance to her, and life increases in importance and reward.
Absolutely. When you were just asking that question, I was picturing in my mind, Mike, that bowl of drugs or a bowl of cocaine and marathons. And let me tell you, when I talk about marathons, I get a natural high. I think that's what you're talking about, a natural high or just experience in life. And there's nothing like running a marathon. I love it. I haven't done it in a while, and I just talked to a personal friend of mine who's going to help me train for a 32-mile race. So I'm trying to get my miles up, and I'm kind of dedicated that to every morning. I'm trying to get my, running more and more. As you can tell, I'm pretty hopped up on it once I start talking about it. But is that something that you're talking about, like running or breakfast with grandma or Mike helping out his clients or whatever the case may be?
It's that, but that too. I think when you talk about running, you don't only experience the natural high, of the endorphins kicking in.
Well, that was my next question. Yes,
but you also experience a reward of achievement. You've done something that's exceptional that you've worked toward, so you look inside and can be proud of your medal. It's a cool thing to see. We reap rewards not only from smelling roses in life, but we also reap rewards from problem solving and learning to do it efficiently and with class.
Absolutely. So true. I can remember early sobriety, going to so many meetings and just being glum and down, but, sober. And all of a sudden, being at a meeting one night in an old church, and it was full of smoke. Back in the day, they smoked in these AA halls up in Massachusetts. This was in the mid-'80s, late 80s. And something was said at the meeting, and it just kicked in. I remember walking home to my apartment that night. I didn't have a job. I was suspended from my job as a police officer. I didn't have any money at all. I had a Boston baked bean jar full of change I was living off of. And when I got home, I hadn't felt that good about myself in I don't know how long. And I had been a cocaine addict. And it was just a moment that stands out. It's still there. And when I help people, when I see people achieve sobriety, when I'm sitting across from a patient who tells me that they're feeling good, they're having a good day, they've achieved something with a child, with a parent or a loved one, it just gives me a natural high. So, boy, I'll tell you, I'm so glad you said what you did. I'm going to watch this podcast later and listen to it a couple more times because it's just, you're right on the money.
Absolutely spot on. And one other question, Doc, to follow up that.
Well, let me, if I may,
Sure.
just add on one little thing. There's an interesting, having to do with reward, there's an interesting phenomenon that scientists are aware of too. It's called temporal discounting. And the behavioral paradigm of this is, imagine I'm totally straight up so that what I say I'm going to do, I'm handing you a $100 bill. And as you reach for it, I pull it back and say, if you wait a week, I'll give you $150. The temporal discounting is, how does the person price in their mind $150 a week down the road versus $100 now? Well, Warren Buffett, the most successful investor on the planet, would kill for a 50% return on his investment in 1 week. Many people with addictive problems view that $150 as worth about $75. So being able to smell, taste rewards that are in the future means that you can invest in your future and are willing to march toward that goal. So one of the things we do, it's a real subtle aspect of cognitive mental functioning, is if we're aware of that in people, we try to help them develop that nose for the future. Mm-hmm. So they have the motivation to go after good stuff. Well,
that's what addicts want. They seek the here and now. I want my high right now. I want that. I can't wait. That's why I guess, they rob, old ladies or knock off liquor stores or whatever the case may be, because they need that fix right now. And I can see that waiting on that $100 to turn into $150 sometimes is, I guess we're not wired that way. And it's docs like you that can help us achieve those goals and become long-term goals. I guess that's what that would be. I mean, it's only a week, but still it's a long-term goal to make another $50 on top of it.
And that ties into that quote you mentioned before the break, that getting clean is the pleasure-seeking enterprise. I mean, I don't want people to be clean so that they'll be goody-goodies in the eyes of whomever. I want them to get clean because I think they're going to have a happier, more rewarding life.
Exactly.
And part of that is learning to invest in your future.
Yeah. That's a perfect example. I was always told, you don't come into recovery for your wife, or you can come into recovery for your wife or your kids or whatever, but eventually when you find it, you're coming into recovery for yourself so you can take care of you and your assets so you can protect that, and then you take care of everybody else after that. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to have any of that in the future. You're not going to have your family or friends or job or whatever.
Great point.
We've seen that happen 1,000 times over. So, Doc, in closing, anything that you want to kind of sum up the podcast with? This was an excellent podcast, by the way. I wish we can go on for another 12 hours with you. Definitely one of the best. Very fascinating, and we'd love to have you on again. But in closing, what can you sum up for us as far as what you're doing with the addicts and this podcast?
Well, going back to the unhappy statistics about success in this business, I think the statistics are unknown, really, because I think we're refining, our means and our ways of treating patients. But the bottom line is, people out there, look for optimistic docs, because if the doc doesn't believe in the possibility of positive change for you, how are you ever going to, soak that up yourself? Because I start out optimistic. I start out believing in my patients, and then I try to figure out what the roadblocks are that are in their way.
Excellent.
Well, what a great podcast.
Absolutely.
Dr. McEwen, you have been, without a doubt, one of the best.
Fascinating.
Yeah, one of the best guests we've had, and you're chock full of information, knowledge, and what a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Doc. And remember, we want to thank Genesis House again for having Doc on. They make this all possible. And
absolutely.
Mike, if they want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Call me at 978-746-1717. Dr. Duncan McEwen, you are a scholar and gentleman, and boy, what a great podcast. Thank you.
If you want to get a hold of Doc, just Google him. You'll be able to find him. He's in Durham, North Carolina.
Dr. Duncan McEwen.
That's it. Thanks, Doc.
Thank
sober.
you.
Stay sober, everybody.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.